Relationships are challenging. How do we develop healthy relationships? Well, we first have to understand that it's a process. Relationships just don't start, relationships just don't develop. There's a process in building a relationship that first starts with an exchange. And if you follow this step by step, not only will you have a healthy relationship, but potentially it can remain long term. And so when it comes to God and humanity, we first have to look at how did God develop this relationship with humanity once he blew the breath into this lump of clay or into this dust that he turned into formed man out of. Well, we first have to understand, how do we start to develop a healthy relationship? I learned this when I was sitting in the window early one morning, and I was watching how the earth reacted when the sun came up about 6 o'clock. And I realized that it was an exchange. That was that first form of communication, exchange, which is something that you do when you eat. First thing you do when you get a plate of food in front of you, the first thing that you do is eat with your eyes. That's your first form of communication. You know how far you want to go right then and there. That's how relationships should be developed. I was telling this to a client. If you can't sit down with your mate for at least 3 minutes and look into one another's eyes, it's a good chance that their relationship won't last. And if it does, it won't have the depth that relationship should have to sustain itself from a healthy point of view. And so that's your first exchange. You know, people have said over the years, always make eye contact, always make eye contact. Well, I've often have done that coming up as a teenager, and people will miscommunicate that and have miscommunicated that over the years. And I imagine that it still happen. That eye contact, a person will take that the wrong way, especially if they have been conditioned or programmed to communicate a certain way. So I encourage anybody that's in a relationship, if you can't sit down with your mate and look in each other's eyes without even touching, or if you want to grab their hands, but just look in each other's eyes and communicate a language to each other. That's what's being broken. How to communicate, because language is essential. And if you only speak one language, well, then you have to learn how to speak more than one. So it starts with an exchange. And that once that exchange is made and it's a healthy exchange, then it begins to move into communication. And once that communication is developed, then it develops a harmony. It develops a rhythm. Now it can be as disharmonious as it can harmonious. But something is going to develop, whether it be a healthy relationship or whether it would be an unhealthy relationship. But once that rhythm is starting to develop, not based on interest or ideas or anything like that. This is an internal communication, and this is an internal rhythm that starts to develop. And once that develops, then we begin to move into relationships. So when God blew the breath into humanity, people are not getting, and I don't think that they understand, is it wasn't he just blew breath into humanity and somebody got up and started running fast as they could. That wasn't the case. There was an exchange that took place. And based on the exchange, there was a harmonious between two different kinds of systems or two different kinds of energies. And once that began to move a certain way, assumably, well, it had to be harmonious. And then we began to move into a relationship is being developed. Whether it is humanity to a higher power, a God with a God, however that looks, that's something, I get fired up about that because people are being misled on their gods, on their infinite consciousness within themselves. So I'm not going to touch that one just yet. But all I'm saying is, in order to build a healthy relationship, you cannot look at the relationship. You have to first look at the exchange. Then you have to look at the camaraderie in the exchange, the communication. And once the communication takes place, you start to feel that rhythm. That rhythm will start to develop that relationship into one that you can move forward in, or one that you cannot move forward in. But that is the key to how to build healthy relationships. What is that initial exchange? And that initial exchange will begin to tell you the rest of the story. So follow that exchange. It's an exchange. It's communication. It is a rhythm, whether it's disharmonious or harmonious. And then we begin to move into relationships. And from there, that's how you start to develop a long-term interaction with another individual. Peace.